Welcome to the Port of Long Beach. As we remember our 100th anniversary, I invite you to see the Port of Long Beach, one of the world's unsung marvels of human achievement, through the eyes of those who helped build it.
When I first came to work for the city and you looked out towards the port, it was about half the size it is now.
When I first went to sea on a rather small ship, it was 450 feet long. It carried 8,000 tons of cargo. We had a crew of 50. Now you've got these ships coming in. They're 1,200 feet long. They carry 100,000 tons of cargo, and they've got a crew of 15.
It wasn't really until I was mayor that I really realized what an advantage it is to have this port in the city of Long Beach.
For the last 100 years, countless individuals, from visionary leaders to hardworking people, transform what was once a mudflat at the mouth of the LA River into one of the world's premier seaports, the Port of Long Beach. This superstructure for trade between the U.S. and primarily Asia moves about $120 billion in cargo each year and supports 1.4 million jobs across the United States. Today, the port touches millions of lives through the goods it brings to our store shelves, the products it exports, and the opportunities it generates across the globe. But it wasn't always that way.
This is what the Port of Long Beach used to look like. Dredging of the shorefront marshlands began at the turn of the century in what is now the Inner Harbor.
It didn't start out being a big container port, it started out being a small bulk port.
And it just slowly grew over time, and building one berth at a time and one pier at a time. And now it is what it is today from a lot of hard work from a lot of good people.
Much like our U.S. Constitution, the founding fathers of the Port of Long Beach really had a terrific vision on what the port should do, how it should benefit the local community, and many of those things we still hold very dear to us today, and really is the bedrock on how we operate.
Seeing the interplay of cranes, trains, and trucks on a massive scale, it's easy to wonder just what Charles Wyndham had in mind when he surveyed the undeveloped land the port now occupies. In 1909, his Los Angeles Dock and Terminal Company used mules and steam-driven equipment to carve Long Beach's first single ship channel into the marshland.
A belief in the prosperity of tomorrow has been the underlying theme in the distinguished tradition of the Port of Long Beach.
This opening in the land opened a door for enterprising people such as John F. Craig, who relocated his entire shipbuilding business from Toledo, Ohio, to this fledgling port community.
He had to install railroad tracks to get in. The workers walked in along the railroad tracks, and he built a shipyard from scratch.
Along with luxury yachts, cargo vessels, and naval ships, Craig also built dredging ships, which kept shipping channels clear as the Port of Long Beach began to take shape.
The first ship they built was a dredge because there was no entrance into the Port of Long Beach, so they had to dredge an entranceway. The second ship they built was a tugboat so that the tug could bring the ships through the channel into the port.
With more ships calling at Long Beach, the need for expert pilots who truly knew how to navigate the local waterways gave birth to a family-run business that flourishes to this day, Jacobson Pilot Services.
We didn't have too many pilots. My poor dad was all by himself, and he'd just go out. Sometime at night when he docked, my mother would take the kids in the car to go pick him up because we didn't have any pilot stationed there. In those days, he handled about 5 ships a month. Some of the old people used to tell you when you learned, some of the old pilots that were around, you learned to pilot a ship by hitting the dock a few times. We learned that's bad.
We don't like talking about the bad stuff.
No.
But we've had a ship go up on the breakwater without a pilot.
Oh, yeah.
The captain told us to get off early, and the pilot got off and the captain put the ship up on the breakwater. We've had a couple ships run into each other because of bad weather, things like that. So we've definitely had our challenges.
On June 24th, 1911, when the SS Iroquois delivered 280,000 feet of redwood lumber from Northern California to the port's original 500-foot wooden dock, the port was officially dedicated and the Port of Long Beach was in business. Soon more ships would come, which meant more jobs, many of them done by hand.
You could see the cargo, you could touch it, you could feel it, you could smell it. In some cases, you could taste it. It stimulated your senses.
Handling cargo was very rudimentary, very basic, very labor intensive. We still had people using hand trucks and cargo hooks, and pallets and bags of stuff were being piled one by one into the holds of ships.
When I was first getting into the warehouse, we had a rail car, a box car of hides come in, and I didn't know what that was. And the guys come down and check it out. As we were walking to the end of the warehouse, there was this smell. I was like, wow. And it got stronger and stronger, and this was not a good smell. And we went up to a boxcar, and they threw open the doors, and it was like, oh my. And it was moving. It was alive, and it truly unsalted or untreated hides. They turned them inside out. The boxcar had gotten side railed or stuck in the desert someplace, and we'd been looking for it. It was pretty ripe.
The odor was terrible, and as you're working them, you get used to the odor. So eventually, you don't notice the odor, and you go marching off to eat lunch at lunchtime, and you walk into a restaurant, and everybody's looking at you right away, and you wonder, you forget because you can't smell yourself, and so you wonder what's everybody looking at us for, and pretty soon they start moving away from you. So then you wouldn't have trouble finding a place to eat.
You never knew you had a banana stalk on your shoulder and we're in a long line trying to get to the belt. You never knew what was going to crawl out of that thing down your back, and or come running down your arm. The tarantulas, the snakes, because they were there, and that was part of the job.
120 million bananas come through the Port of Long Beach each month. The refrigerated ships have given them the best of possible care during the high-speed voyage from Central and South America. And here they get the same treatment as they are moved out to their destinations throughout the western states and western Canada.
As the Long Beach and Los Angeles region grew, so did the need for imported goods. But before the port could grow to meet the needs of surrounding communities, port engineers first had to solve a bigger dilemma: the mysterious sinking of the harbor.
We're sitting on top of one of the biggest oil fields in the world, the Wilmington Field, and in the 1920s they started pumping oil out, and it caused the whole area around Terminal Island in the Port of Long Beach to sink. I believe at the center of the subsidence bowl, it's actually a bowl-shaped area, the land has sunk about 26 or 27 feet since they started pumping the oil out. So Terminal Island, original Terminal Island, is underwater now, and they had to build dikes around it. And so for years, in the 50s and 60s, the port was raising their facilities, raising the dikes. They actually took some of these giant transit sheds and unbolted them, jacked them up, and put new foundations under them to keep them out of the water.
Land that didn't exist at the time now does, and it was always a great feeling to walk on brand new land that the world never had. And to actually stand out there on sand that didn't exist, above the water is interesting.
New piers and warehouses appeared seemingly overnight, which drew even more businesses to Long Beach. The wild vision had become a reality through innovative thinking and a can-do attitude. Within its first 50 years, the Port of Long Beach became known as one of the most modern ports in the world.
What was once open sea is now the man-made Port of Long Beach, and the most modern port in America.
It was the home to many firsts. The world's first clear transit sheds, which made storing cargo much easier.
A man can work in a building like this. He has ample space, ample lighting, and protection from the weather.
And the world's first shore-based radar system, installed by Jacobson Pilot Services, which could pinpoint ships 30 miles away.
Sealand Trade, Long Beach Pilot, KMA 372. Captain, we have you on radar and look like to be up to Cebu in about half an hour.
This is the Sealand Trade, Beck. Thank you. This is the Sealand Trade.
But the biggest change that would forever revolutionize cargo handling worldwide came in 1962, containerization.
The port was quick to see a future in cargo container handling as a method of shipment that was easier, faster, and less expensive. A method that would carry the port to world prominence.
I seem to recall we were off of the Cape Hatteras area, and this ship came over the horizon, and we're all looking at it, and it looked like a shoebox. You know, we kept looking and looking and looking. I said, "What is that?" You know, and we looked and looked. It got a little closer, and it was the first Sealand ship that had been put in service along the coast from Baltimore to Texas. And everybody said, "Well, what is that?" And they said, "Well, it's they bring these trucks along, they take the wheels off, and then they put the box on the ship." And we all went, "That'll never work," you know. Little did we know.
So you have to make the channels deeper and wider for the bigger ships. The cranes have to get bigger to reach over the big ships, so the wharf has to be stronger to handle a bigger crane, and then the yard has to be bigger. So you have to constantly upgrade and change these facilities to match the volume of trade and the size of the ships.
When I got to the port in 1990, about 50% of the revenue was generated from containerized trade, and about 50% generated from all other kinds of cargo, whether it was break bulk, liquid bulk, autos, what have you. Now it's about 80% of the revenue is generated by containerized cargo and about 20% by the other cargo. So you can see this tremendous impact of containerized cargo on goods movement.
These weatherproof steel boxes could be stored outside right on the dock. In essence, they were miniature warehouses themselves, uniform in size, stackable, and each could carry as much as 50,000 tons of cargo.
Well, from the outside, you might say if you've seen one container, you've seen them all. But inside, they carry everything from ping pong balls to gold bars.
The days of moving goods on the dock by hand were over. Workers' hands would now control massive machines to move cargo.
Thousands of tons of machinery, hundreds of motor trucks, massive cargo vessels, an operation on a scale that dwarfs man. Yet, operated by man, it functions with the efficiency of a fine watch. Excuse me, I have a container to deliver in Hong Kong.
The landscape of the port changed once again. Giant stork-like cranes loomed over gargantuan vessels as heavy equipment operators worked among mountains of containers. But despite rapid modernization and the increased commerce that followed, the Port of Long Beach was still a home port for the U.S. Navy.
For thousands of returning GIs, the Port of Long Beach was the first welcome glimpse of home.
As I recall, that Navy base being full with Navy ships, the Navy Mole out there, crowded with sailors in downtown Long Beach, filling up the Pike and the bars in downtown.
Coming down here on Saturday, going to the Spit and Argue Club, all the rides and stuff.
I saw airplanes being loaded on ships, tanks being loaded in the holds of ships. I saw mules being loaded for the invasion of Monte Cassino on board ships. So it was an exciting experience.
There was a huge crane there called Herman the German. And it was called that because it was came from the Nazis as a result of the war. You know, when the war was over, somehow Herman the German found its way into the Port of Long Beach. I never knew how it got there. It was a relic of the war.
It became a strategic spot for the Navy. There were times when there were 3 and 4 aircraft carriers parked along do ships park along the Navy Mole, and so it was just an area that was growing and in importance and in the new innovations in how large cargo ships can come and go.
But as the Cold War came to a close in the 1990s, the naval complex closed with it. A leading job center was gone. Throughout this period, however, trade with Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, and Taiwan had boomed. And for many port and civic leaders, the best possible use for the land the Navy left behind became clear.
During that time, there was a discussion of many ideas that were put forth by various interested parties about what should happen to this property.
This was our Navy. This was our Navy town. We wanted it here. When there was nothing that we could do, then we moved towards how do we make it into something that we can use.
As the Navy left, a new terminal was built, a new area for cargo to come in, and now we see it handled in a different way.
The result was the development of Pier T, Long Beach's first mega terminal, which was designed and built to accept a new generation of container ships sailing the seas. These new post-Panamax ships were as large as 5 football fields and could hold up to 12,000 containers, enough goods to fill the largest shopping mall with clothing, toys, and shoes 8 feet high, wall to wall.
Take off your shoe and look at the tongue of your shoe and tell me where it's made. And almost 99% of tennis and footwear is made in China or Taiwan or someplace on the Pacific Rim. So that connection is made almost instantaneously about, wait a second, this came from someplace else. And that's what the Port of Long Beach is all about, is so that the consumers can get well-made, reasonably priced goods from all over the world, and we're kind of the conduit for getting those goods.
The port brings the world to us. The port brings us the world.
The waterfront has changed dramatically over the years, but it wasn't until the 1980s that rail joined the list of innovations developed at the Port of Long Beach.
Maybe the strongest attraction to the port is its dedication to innovation, with operations like the Intermodal Container Transfer Facility, which speeds the exchange between truck and rail, saving everyone valuable time and money getting commodities to market.
International Transportation Service on Pier G was among the first terminals in the nation to double-stack containers onto rail cars on the waterfront and speed them across the country. The port was also instrumental in building the Alameda Corridor, a below-street level rail speedway that made it possible to eliminate over 200 surface crossings, while creating a nationwide delivery system of goods that is unmatched by any other port in the U.S.
Oh, that was a terrific day. We had bands and hot dogs. We had celebrities and politicians. We had a tremendous outpouring of support for the project. We had the 2 train, 1 engine from Santa Fe, Burlington Northern Santa Fe, and 1 from Union Pacific that met like Promontory Point and almost like driving the Golden Spike.
Overcoming obstacles, implementing ingenious solutions, all enormous feats. But for the people who made the Port of Long Beach what it is today, it has also been a journey of fond memories.
Over 200,000 people owe their livelihood to the Port of Long Beach.
I saw in the Press Telegram an article that just said, Port of Long Beach looking for new Miss Port of Long Beach. And this was the first time they had opened it up to the community. It had always been only open to persons who worked at the port or families of members of port administration. So I was like the first Miss Port of Long Beach who was from the community. I actually I still have my ribbon, my Miss Port of Long Beach ribbon.
I was there when the Queen Mary arrived. That was a big day. That was a big celebration.
In 1967, the city of Long Beach astounded the world by purchasing the Queen of the Seas, the Cunard liner Queen Mary. Her last voyage, a journey halfway round the world, terminated on a glorious Southern California day at the Port of Long Beach, where she remains alive and well and receiving visitors every day.
Well, my father became a longshoreman in 1959. I was born in 1961. So I was actually born into the waterfront. I'm a waterfront baby. And I think they were giving out 150 jobs to women. I said they're going to give out 149 because the first one is going to be mine.
It's interesting, having come from where I was 16 years ago, fighting the effects of the port and the expansion of the port down to the neighborhoods, to being able to actually be down at the port and being able to help make policy that helps the community. Helps the community from environmental standpoint, from impact standpoint, and from business standpoint.
For many years, as we'd go to Asia, and our host at dinner would bring the fish, and the fish would be whole, and they would say, "In your honor, we'd like to serve," and they want to give you the head of the fish. And every one of my fellow commissioners would say, "No, thank you." And I thought to myself, the day I become president, they tell me that, I'm going to eat the damn thing.
Monumental changes have taken place. Of that, there is no doubt. But today, the Port of Long Beach is leading another revolution. This time, it's the port's commitment to becoming the greenest, most sustainable port in the world.
There is still the responsibility of operating this vast port complex so that it fits comfortably and positively into the highly civilized and extremely pleasant environment of Long Beach. This responsibility the port discharges with great style. A commitment for now and for the future.
And I think the port was always a good environmental steward. I think we always felt that we did the right thing. When we cleaned up the oil field, we cleaned it up in a very responsible way. When we got the Navy station and shipyard, we remediated that in a very responsible way. But we also didn't take into account the impact that the increased trade was having on our community. And so in 2005, the Port of Long Beach and the Board of Harbor Commissioners embraced a green port policy. And that really changed the ethic at the port as to how we were going to perform, how we were going to be responsible, and how we were going to develop those facilities in the future.
If you know it's the right thing to do, you've got to stay online and keep doing it. The Clean Trucks program, was so successful, but people, before it started, people told us it would never happen to actually change over the entire fleet of trucks, and we said it was going to be done in 5 years. We actually did it in around 2 years, reducing pollution over 80% just from trucks alone.
They've chosen to tell the world, saying this is where the world's going, this is important, we're going to do it first, and it may have some slight reduced impact on us in the beginning in terms of our commercial activity, but it's the right thing to do, and the rest of the world's going to have to go there. And I think that's leadership. That's what leadership's about. So they're willing to take that risk, maybe getting a little bit less return in terms of the economic activity, but doing the right thing by people who live around the port and demonstrating to the rest of the world that it can be done.
I remember the waters of Long Beach being very dirty. Most of it came from the Navy that was down here. But I mean, really, there was no marine life at all when I was a kid. And now you look at it and the waters are pristine. We have all sorts of wild sea life everywhere in the port.
The Port of Long Beach believes that the waters of this harbor should be kept clean, clear, and pure.
Considering that the cargo growth and the ship growth has been absolutely phenomenal, and yet we've returned backwards on cleaning up the water to a point where it was maybe 100 years ago. And that's a remarkable achievement.
We are now called the Green Port, okay? Which is a great thing. We have worked very, very hard to clean up the emissions and to make it better for everyone.
Change is inevitable. Growth is intentional. This quote certainly holds true. Even now, as the port celebrates its 100th anniversary, the footprint is changing yet again, sparking new terminals, new bridges, new equipment, all to build the port of the future.
This is one of the economic hubs for the entire country. And as such, it provides a function that is truly needed for our nation.
People look at the port sometimes and say, well, it's kind of ugly, right? And I don't see it that way at all. I mean, these huge cranes, this whole industry, there's a beauty to all this industry going on. It's like a kinetic sculpture of some kind, but on a really grand scale. And if you were able to, if you took the economy, and you could lift up the hood and look inside, what you'd see would be the port. What you'd see would be the port and all these people running around and the trucks and the trains, and this is what the economy is. It's not a bunch of guys sitting around in suits in a boardroom someplace.
And until you come over and see it, you won't believe it.
The landscape may change, the players may come and go, but one thing remains. The port continues to exceed all expectations of what a port is supposed to be. As we remember our 100th anniversary, we encourage you to visit, share your stories with us, and help us celebrate an incredible journey that has no end in sight.